I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman.
And I'm Gabriel Chrisman.
And today we're going to be discussing Hide and Seek by Wilkie Collins. Now, if you've been watching us any length of time, you know that Wilkie Collins is one of my absolute favorite authors. I love his stuff. We already talked about his other book, Poor Miss Finch, which is about a blind lady.
Has some superficial resemblances.
Well, this one is about the action revolves around a character who is deaf. And an interesting difference between these two books is that whereas in Poor Miss Finch, Lucilla, the blind lady, is a very, very strong, very opinionated, very forceful character who doesn't want anyone to feel sorry for her ever. In fact, she gets really offended when people feel sorry for her. In Hide and Seek, Madonna, who is the deaf character, she's the action revolves around her, but she's not as active of a character in the story. She doesn't take an active role in all of the things that are going on. It's just that all these things happen for her benefit and because of her, but she's not acting in all of the scenes you see. And I thought that was a very interesting difference, that Poor Miss Finch, you have Lucilla and you have Madame Protolungo, who are these two incredibly strong female characters. And in Poor Miss Finch, the men are barely plot devices. They're just, they're there in the background and they're barely doing anything. In this one, it's the opposite.
Right. They actually do the action.
Right. So the men they are protecting the women, they are defending the women, they are acting on behalf of the women. They're doing all of these things for the women, but the women have a much more passive role in this one, which is the main difference between those two books. And I like them both. I really love Lucilla and Madame Protolungo. I think they are awesome characters. But not every woman in the world is a girl boss, and I do get irritated by the modern tendency to try to turn every woman into a girl boss.
It does interest me.
I do like reading stories where the men protect the women too.
Yeah.
But what did you start to say?
It does interest me that this one was the one that was written earlier.
Yeah.
And then was substantially modified before it was republished.
Right, because in this one, Madonna is, everyone feels sorry for her. Everyone, she's always the poor deaf and dumb girl. And I think that possibly when Wilkie Collins got some feedback from his readers, I think some people in that community probably would have told him, just because she's deaf doesn't mean she necessarily wants you to feel sorry for her. And just because she has this challenge in her life doesn't mean she's always going to be a pathetic character.
And it makes me think of the class I'm teaching right now on public speaking, where we go over the pathos, ethos, logos. And the first thing that we tell them about pathos is really easy to overdo.
Why don't you tell them about that? Because
right.
That gets so tell us about pathos, egos, and logos. Ethos.
Yeah. So basically, those are the three appeals you have when you're trying to communicate with people, whether that's public speaking or whether it's in writing.
And this goes back to ancient Greece.
Absolutely.
Ancient Greek oratory.
This is from Aristotle's Rhetoric, which is really the first written source we have about the art of persuasion and how you basically form an argument and an appeal. And the idea is that basically you've got these three sort of components. And pathos is emotion. So you're appealing to your audience's emotions directly. And it can be dangerous because, yes, it's easy to either screw up or overdo. The example that we end up showing them in the class I'm teaching is the example of a commercial that was done by Sarah McLachlan in the early 2000s, which if you were watching TV during that time, I'm sure that people will remember because it shows you pictures of one-eyed kittens and, pitiful little animals, of course, who've been abused. And it's playing one of Sarah McLachlan's very mopey songs over the top of it. And
that song was so overplayed on the radio.
yes. In any case, it's the textbook example, literally, of overdoing the pathos. And it can backfire then. People just get annoyed because they know they're being manipulated. But if you do it correctly, emotion is a very powerful tool to influence your audience. And so you look at much more subtle examples of emotional manipulation in everything, and that can be extremely effective. Ethos is an appeal to your audience's values, to how they view themselves, to how they want to think about themselves, what they think they look up to, what they admire in other people. That's ethos. And then logos is logic. Logos is making a rational argument.
I think ethos can be overdone too, though, because I think that's why so many modern movies and stories have these ridiculous girl boss characters who are just caricatures that are totally unrealistic.
It can absolutely be overdone.
Because they think, oh, strong women are popular, we're going to make the strongest woman ever, who just becomes this ridiculous, unrealistic caricature.
Well, to me, the ethos thing is where Superman falls down. Because he's represented as being too perfect in every way.
Well, and that's the problem with these stories I'm talking about, where the strong women characters are too...
Right, they're overdone.
They're like Superwoman, but stronger than Superwoman ever was in Superwoman's comics. They're just... They're too much.
Yeah.
They're too much. Everyone has flaws. Everyone has some... Even Achilles had his weakness.
Absolutely.
I mean, Achilles was literally a demigod, and yet even he had a weakness. And so everyone's got to have one of those, or they're, as you said, just not an interesting character.
Right. And so ethos can definitely fall down on those grounds. Yeah. And logos basically falls apart if it doesn't bear any relation to the other two.
Explain that.
If you have an argument that's based on pure logic, humans tend to reject it because it isn't human. Yeah. It doesn't take into account your values or your feelings. If you make a purely utilitarian logical argument, often it will be horrifying to people because it just won't take into account humanity.
That's what you run into when people get too strong into the defense of, but we're following the science.
Correct.
If you follow the science too hard and don't take the human aspect into account, then you do things that are absolutely horrible and atrocious to people and are actually atrocities.
Yes, exactly. And that's where you tend to get genocide and things like that, is one of these or the other run amok.
Right, exactly.
And so, those are the three classic elements. And I think that it's interesting that we ended up coming up to talk about that with this one.
Well, we got a little off topic.
We did, but that's okay.
Confess, but I mean, every good book has all three of those elements.
Absolutely. Every piece of, anything that someone is trying to communicate to someone else, if there are humans involved, there will probably be those three elements.
Yes, which is a good part of storytelling. And this is a wonderful story. I do love it as a story. Even if he goes a little too far into pathos, it's not too far. Right. It's not too far.
Maybe the original unedited version was too far.
Maybe, because this is actually... So this... when is this particular
It was
copy?
1854 is when it was originally published.
Yeah, I think that was when the first edition came out. This is the second edition. So this one...
Fortunately, I don't believe that our editions have publication dates in them.
Yeah, but there might be one on his preface note in the front. He does that sometimes.
Yeah.
61.
Right.
1861. So this particular copy is from the first year of the American Civil War.
Yeah. But of course written in England.
Of course written in England and published in England.
Yeah.
But, this is the second edition copy. And he did make substantial changes to it between the first and the second edition because he got feedback and he worked with that.
And it was one of his earlier novels.
It was the third novel he ever wrote. But the story is... I still haven't told the story.
I guess not. Yeah. Perhaps we should have led with that.
Perhaps we should have led with that. Well, next time. It's a very simple story. And it's hard to tell without giving the whole thing away because it is such a simple story, and that's part of the beauty of it. There's this deaf and mute girl who is a complete mystery to everyone around her. She has popped up as a 10-year-old child performing in a circus, and no one knows who her mother was. No one knows where she came from. No one knows who her relatives are. All anyone knows is that there was some sort of tragedy about her mother. No one knows anything else. And the whole book is finding out all of these details of what happened to her mother and who her remaining relatives are. And
Which makes it a classic sort of mystery.
It's a classic mystery.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful mystery because it's not one of those, there's a body and you have to work out who in this sealed room is the murderer.
Right.
It's a mystery.
It's a more realistic type of mystery.
It's a much more realistic type of mystery because in life we seldom know all the answers to anything.
I do also like the fact that plot device of the circus. The circus was in the business of obscuring the truth.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
And so it makes it almost perfect that she's in a circus.
Right. And it was actually, the first time I read this book was what started thinking me along the lines of writing A Trip and a Tumble, which is a visit to a circus that actually happened. Then I was reading this book when I came across an article about an actual visit of a circus to Victoria, British Columbia. And so when those two things came together, that was what led to me writing A Trip and a Tumble. Even though the circus in my book is a much more moral circus than this one.
Right.
But you're right, that a lot of circuses were all about hiding things and
Or making up their own version of things and presenting that to the world.
And so this book is about this group of people trying to get through all those layers and find out what the truth is.
Right.
And it's also about how that doesn't just happen in the circus.
Right.
That it also happens in these much higher echelons of society. And so the characters are trying to untangle this web of all of these misrepresentations and illusions that have gone on in high and low class, and trying to work out what the truth is behind all of those.
Yeah.
So I love this book. I think it is a very sweet book. And I like that in this one the women are being defended and protected and fought over. I like that about it. I love Poor Miss Finch for its strong woman characters, but I also love this one for the men protecting the women. And I love that Wilkie Collins wrote both of those, and I think they're both important.
Yes.
And if you haven't read this yet, you are in for an absolute treat. So I definitely hope you'll check this one out. One of my favorites.
Yeah, if you can't tell by now, almost any Wilkie Collins is going to be one that we recommend.
Yes, yes. There's only one of his I started to read that was a little hard, and that's the one set in ancient times, because
His attempts at historical fiction are less effective.
he does much better with books contemporary to himself.
Yeah.
And I just love this one, Hide and Seek by Wilkie Collins. Absolutely check it out. And if you already have read it, in the comments, tell everyone what you liked about it and who your favorite character was.
Yeah.
So, thanks for watching today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up, and remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading!